12 o'clock noon here at EAC, our first seminar of the convention. And we have a winner. I'll be honest, I don't know how many years I know Ray. It's got to be somewhere in that 40 range, I would think, isn't that?
Probably.
Probably. And it's
A little louder.
louder? Okay. What's hard for me is to introduce a friend. He has been a friend and a great friend over all these years. He's knowledgeable, he's funny, and he has got so much information in him, it's hard to get it all out in an hour. So he's going to do his best and give you a talk about the coins from 1607 to 1857. So you're probably going to be here for about maybe 3 or 4 years at least. All right, so be prepared. I hope you packed lunch. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Ray Williams to you. And Ray, we made this very expensive document. EAC wishes to express sincere gratitude to Ray Williams for presenting this seminar, 250 Years of Copper Coins, 1607 to 1857, as part of the annual convention here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. You don't want to wait until the talk's over to see if it's a hit? Okay, I'm going to try to speak up because I know that some are hard of hearing. This isn't school. The good seats are up front if anybody wants to relocate. But I'm having some difficulty with neuropathy. So if you don't mind, I'm going to sit down during the presentation. It's informal. There's no tests. Just go with me, enjoy, maybe get some ideas. By a show of hands, how many people are actual large cent collectors? Half cent collectors? Colonial collectors? Okay, just how many just love history? Okay, there we go. That covers, there are a few people, I guess, in here just to rest their feet. Okay, 250 years of copper coinage. I chose 1607 because that was the date of the founding of Jamestown in Virginia, the first permanent British settlement. They had their difficulties in settling, but they made it work. And I chose the ending date, 1857, because of the Coinage Act that demonetized foreign coins in circulation. Not that they didn't continue to circulate into the 1900s, but that's the date of the act, and that's like the end of large cents. So everything in between, I think I have about 40 slides, 5 minutes a slide. I'm only kidding, if there's any math majors out there. Okay. 1607 in Jamestown. In excavations there, they recovered patent farthings. These were farthing coins from England, and they were not struck regally. They were struck on patent orders that were given by the king. And there were Rose, Harrington, Richmond, Maltevers, Lennox farthings. I think that the most fascinating one is the Rose farthing, which has like a wedge of brass in it to make it look as though the crown is gold. As with this and all the other coins I'm talking about, there were counterfeits, and those are as historic and collectible as the regal coins. But these are the tiny farthings. These were found in excavations in Jamestown. There's a curator there, no longer there, who wrote her doctoral thesis on these. And we had some nice discussions and a few minor disagreements, but it's good to see doctoral theses on numismatic topics. You have to keep in mind that before we had presidents, we had kings. These kings were our kings in British North America. So we have the halfpenny, which was probably the most widely circulated copper coin in the colonies, both counterfeit and regal. And they start off here with, let's see, Charles II. Then we had William and Mary. William after Mary died. And the three Georges, George I, George II, and George III. And these were well known to everybody, and it seems as though there was little concern about whether you were tendered a real one or a counterfeit. They just served a purpose in circulation. Besides the halfpennies of a very similar design, there were also farthings, which was 1/4 of a penny. And these are all very collectible, very economical. Everything I'm talking about today, well, most of what I'm talking about today is very economical. Some is not. But these are an easy thing to add to your collection that have a lot of history behind them. But these were our kings. There's no James II because he only issued in tin, and I think Queen Anne, the only queen in this time period, she only had a pattern halfpenny. I don't believe she ever made one for circulation. Besides the English, we also had the Dutch. The Dutch were a world trading power. They were everywhere. You had the Dutch East Indies, the Dutch West Indies, and without a doubt, some of the Dutch copper coins, the duets, were in colonial America. We tend to think of New York and Philadelphia, Boston, Jamestown, Williamsburg, all as being British, but we did have a New Amsterdam before there was a New York, and after there was a New York, and before there was a New York again. New York went back and forth a couple of times during wars, but these without a doubt circulated, and they were copper coins and very economical. In Spain, the Spanish had their maravedis, and these did circulate here. I believe that there are a couple New Jersey coppers that were struck over Spanish maravedis. And pretty much anything round and metal would circulate during the colonies. So these are a couple examples of the Spanish maravedis. And we tend to forget that there was a New Sweden during the reign of Queen Christina. The area between southern New Jersey, Philadelphia, and northern Delaware, that little area was known as New Sweden. It was prosperous and eventually taken over by the Dutch during the time period of New Amsterdam, which didn't make a lot of difference because the British would have got them eventually anyway. But these coins are rather large. The Swedes had copper mines that they exported. They actually made money in copper money in plates that were anywhere from this big to weighing 16 or 20 pounds. And that's how they did commerce. I believe that the wars that they participated in bankrupted the economy of silver and gold. It was there, but it was not common. Copper was common. And these, well, except for the Queen Christina coin in the bottom left, these are all extremely economical. I'm talking like under $50. Then we have one of my favorite coins. This is a St. Patrick farthing. These were brought, there was a cask of them brought over to the New World, to New Jersey, by Mark Newby, and they circulated here. There's legislation made to value these in commerce, and Mark Newby had to make, he was like a banker, he had to make good on these. And I took a field trip with Roger Saboni to the State Archives in New Jersey, and we actually held the will of Mark Newby in our hands. Mark Newby's wife had to make good on, I think, like 40 pounds of these halfpennies. But they're extremely important. They did circulate. Metal detectorists have found these. They have not found the larger, what we call halfpennies, but they found these copper farthings that we call them. Along, I believe, one silver farthing was found too. Fascinating area. Sid Martin wrote the book on these. And we had French colonies. And here's an example of a 9 denier. And they were struck from 1721 to 1722. You don't find as many of these as you find of other copper coins of the period. And, but they're nice for a typeset. and they're not really pricey. They're a lot more economical than you'd think. I hate to talk about money. I'm more into the history of these, but you guys might be considering adding a few of these to your collection to think about the history. This is a Rose Americana, and they struck these in 3 denominations, all identical in design. The only difference is the size. They struck them in crowned rose and uncrowned rose. And that was a Tudor rose with another rose inside for 2 different houses of the government. So to get a typeset of these, it's 6 coins. These are on the pricey side. When Sid Martin was writing the book, I figured, well, let me get my 6 coin typeset before the book comes out and they go up in price. And the book came out, they didn't go up in price, they just stayed expensive. But that's okay. I love the history, the story. You're going to hear more about these coins tomorrow, some fascinating things, but not part of this review here. The same person who made the Rose Americana coinage, William Wood, he also made Hibernia coinages. And these were actually struck for Ireland. Ireland was not thrilled with them, and a lot of these were exported to the colonies and passed here as halfpennies. And there are a number of different varieties, and one of the more economical coins to find in a higher grade. This is the best coin I have in my collection. I'm only kidding, I do not own. If I did, I wouldn't be married probably. Right, honey? Yeah, she's keeping me honest up here. But this is a Higley copper. These were struck in Connecticut by Samuel Higley, and he, let me get the dates, he lived from 1687 to 1737, and the Higley coppers are dated 1737 and 1739. So he didn't do the 1739s, they were probably a brother or relative, or possibly one of his business partners. But there was a mine in Granby, Connecticut, and it was also turned into a POW prison during the Revolutionary War. These are very historic. Design is so unusual, but it's something I need to admire from afar or in the collections of friends that have these. The only way I'm going to find one is if I find it with a metal detector. We have the Voce Populi, the voice of the people, Hibernia, Irish, 1760, and these are tokens. They did make it over here, probably not in quantity. This is one of those coins in the Red Book that I believe is there out of tradition. I don't know if it really finds a legitimate place there, in my opinion, but they are popular, they're collectible. There's a lot of people very proud of their Irish heritage, and collectors try to get a few of these, and I have a few of them, even if they don't belong in the Red Book, in my opinion. A William Pitt token. William Pitt was the person that promoted our cause in getting the Stamp Act repealed. And there are farthing and a halfpenny designs of this. I don't know that this actually circulated. Probably some of them did. I would think if I found one back then, I would keep it in my pocket as a pocket piece or in a desk drawer or something. If you find anything unusual, you would keep it as such. But it's in the Red Book, it's collectible. They cost a moderate amount. Virginia, this is the only coin struck specifically for a colony. And this is dated 1773. This was completely paid for by the colony. The colony paid for the copper, paid for the minting process, paid to get it shipped across from England back to Virginia. And I think that probably the only reason that the king agreed to have this coinage made was to create a better public relations, because things were not going that good in the colonies between the king and them back in those days. This is, I would guess, probably the most economical of our colonial coinages that you can find in uncirculated grade. I don't know if there's another, but they're available in all grades. They did circulate bust of George III, our enemy, and a shield of Virginia. Fascinating coinage. Now we have the Nova Constellatio coinage, which I was reminded by a good friend that I wrote a column about Nova Constellatio in the Numismatist, and I stated absolutely that these were struck in England, and I take that back. It takes a big man to admit he's wrong. But with recent research coming out of Boston, Spa, and New York, it appears as though the likelihood is these were struck in New York City. And I'm going to go with that. The two major types are a script US and a block US on the back. And these were all halfpenny size. And just a fascinating coin of the time period. They were dated 1783 and 1785. There's a very rare type, 1786, which I believe was a contemporary counterfeit, but I'm not sure of that. But you hardly ever see those. Those are like off the charts. But the regular 83s and 85s are very economical to get an example. And then we have Nova Borac, and that's the Latinized version for New York. And this was a prototype for a possible state coinage contract with New York. New York decided not to go with a coinage contract. There were a number, there were Excelsior coppers and others for a potential contract. Everybody thought that if you had a mint, you were going to make money. But most of the people that had the mints making state coinages and copper coinages did not make money, they lost money. Maybe Machen's Mills made money, but they were kind of illegitimate. But they made so many of these that they actually went past a prototype and entered circulation. And there's a fair number of these, and there's a large head, a small head, and a medium head. And very collectible for anybody interested in New York coinage. Much more affordable than the Excelsior pieces. We have state coinages, and this is the area I enjoy the most. And the top left is New Jersey coppers, Nova Caceria, horsehead generally facing right, shield on the reverse, E pluribus unum, used for the first time in a coin. Then we have to the right of that a landscape Vermont, probably the most beautiful of all the state coinages. Maybe even more beautiful than New Jersey coppers, but we're not filming this, are we? And then below the New Jersey copper is a Connecticut copper, very much resembling the British halfpennies of the time. Vermont eventually went to a design that looked much like that Connecticut copper. And I don't know why they discontinued. Maybe they wanted a coin that more resembled what people were accustomed to seeing in commerce, is my guess. And in the bottom right, you have Vermont Octori. That's the bust type. The bust type, for some reason, don't normally come detailed, crisp, and sharp. That's a great rarity if you find one. Most of them are kind of mushy. And believe it or not, this is an excellent example of a bust type Vermont. Who are we forgetting here? Massachusetts. This is an example. Massachusetts had cents and half cents, and they didn't start making their coins until 1787. So at 1787 and 1788, these were struck. The other state coppers were between 1785 and 1788. Massachusetts minted their coins based on the legislations by the Congress for weights of a potential coinage. And they struck. They're very high quality. You find very few errors. The design, the denomination is on the eagle. So the only difference between cents and half cents is the size of the coin and the denomination on the shield on the eagle. On almost every die variety, the arrows are on the right-hand side and an olive branch on the left. There's one extremely rare variety where the arrows are where the olive branch is here. If you see one of those in a dealer's junk box, get it. You know, even if it's like $2 a coin, get it. It's an extreme rarity. And this is an example of the half cent. Same thing as before, only difference is size and the denomination in the shield. Let me back up one. Okay, there were two engravers for the Massachusetts Mint, and there was Callender and Jacob Perkins. Callender did all of the 1787s, and then the Mint thought in 1788 he was charging too much money for the dies, so they hired Jacob Perkins. And the Perkins dies, you can tell that they're his because the S's are closed almost as though they make an 8. The Callender dies have a very open S, and I got examples of each. Jacob Perkins is one of my colonial heroes. He's like the David Rittenhouse of Boston, but I don't think he gets the recognition he deserves because he eventually moved back to England. He had many patents and an amazing man. And we have our first federal coinage. It was a contract coinage, and this is the Fujio cent. The design copied from the 1776 fractional paper money notes. The links on the back, United States and we are one, and a sundial, sun, Fujio, meaning time flies. 1787 is the date, and legend here, mind your business. Ben Franklin didn't like nosy people. Now, this was something where he wanted industry out there, and work hard was his philosophy. And this is definitely Franklin's design because he designed the paper money, the fractionals, and there was evidence. I think it was a 1983 numismatist article that Eric Newman made showing the progression of scrap paper notes that Franklin wrote, developing the theme for those fractional notes. So I think we rightly give credit to this design to Ben Franklin. Going on copper coins, we have the more modern, the federal issues, and most of you are aware of these. We have large cents, flowing hair, draped bust, matron head, and braided hair, and the reverse with United States and 1 cent on them. And these formed a function. I think they basically took the place of the British halfpennies. I want to back up to the state coppers a little bit. Some people are calling state coppers halfpennies. I think that we were so done with the British monetary system that all our continental currency was denominated in dollars, which was Spanish mill dollars at the time, and that and these coins, the New Jersey and the Connecticut's, were all called coppers. But I think that they're going with a half-pence denomination to make it easier for accounting or whatever for the certification services. But as a traditionalist, I'm always going to call them coppers. These are not coppers, these are cents, absolutely. And as you all know, they're very collectible by type, by date, type, or die state, die variety, and many people collect these. I would say most of the membership, at least 90% of EAC collects the large cents and the half cents. And here are our half cents. We have Liberty cap, draped bust, the classic head, and the braided hair. And the same design on the reverse, on the back there, ½ cent United States of America. And these, you say, why a ½ cent? Well, back then, a ½ cent was some money. If it could buy things, not like today. Today, a penny, well, I don't know, do we even have pennies anymore? I forget how the legislation went. But these are very collectible, and they just scream early America. I don't know, are there any cigar smokers out there? Okay, I'm not one either. So I had to pull this image offline. We have a problem in America until 1857, when all the Spanish money was supposed to be taken out of circulation. You could exchange it for the brand new Flying Eagle cents and all the history in that time period. That could be a talk in itself. But until 1857, the Spanish money circulated here side by side with American money. So you had 8 reals, 4 reals, 2 reals, 1 real, and a ½ real. So if you had a 5-cent Cuban cigar and you went to a country store to buy this, and you tendered a ½ real coin, the ½ real coin was worth 6¼ cents. So what are you going to do? Somebody is going to lose out on 1/4 cent. Now it's either going to be the buyer or the seller. And that was, 1/4 cent was half of a ½ cent. And it would be good public relations not to have this inadequacy, this 1/4 cent difference. So that's a picture of a pretty nice looking ½ real. That's not my ½ real, by the way. Mine doesn't look nearly that nice. So if you tendered in change 1 cent and a ½ cent, then the seller was losing out on 1/4 cent. So what do we do about this? We cut the coin in quarters. Now this is something for large cent collectors and ½ cent collectors to think about. Coin collectors of the 1800s and 1900s did not save cut coins. They saved pretty examples like we do today. But they did cut the coins, and they would cut large cents, state coppers, British halfpennies into quarters using either shears or a chisel. So where are you going to find these nowadays? Metal detectorists. They pull these out of the ground. Some are attractive, some aren't attractive, but they're a little piece of history there. There's no other reason to cut a large cent into quarters other than to make this small change. So what do you large cent collectors need to do? Look on eBay for metal detectorists that pull these out. And I've bought a couple from metal detectorists. A couple have gifted me some. So I have a couple large cents, 1 Massachusetts cent, and a couple of miscellaneous. Just as little pieces of history. Are they worth a lot? No. Their history is, though. And it's something you deduce from what the coins tell you, not something that you can necessarily find by reading history. And now for the slide you've all been waiting for. Here we go. So I made a quick overview of not all, but a lot of the more popular or easily attainable copper coins from 1607 that were found in Jamestown to 1857, a little bit of history, a little bit of something new for the collecting community, and I'm going to entertain questions. Yeah.
Ray, is it fair to assume that if one of the kings was on the piece, it was probably struck in England?
No.
No?
No. Well, the counterfeits that were struck in the United States, Machen's Mills and other mints, counterfeited British halfpennies with the king's image on them. So,
The regal stuff was from England.
yeah, the regal was from England. England didn't strike any coins here.
Okay.
Anything struck here was counterfeit. Other questions? Yes.
For an average person, like buying something like in the 1790s figure out what was worth what, so you were getting changed,
Yeah,
people were getting ripped off.
okay, the question was it difficult conducting commerce and making change in those days? It probably was. The schools had to teach better math than they're teaching nowadays, I think. But back then, I think my wife used to work at Princeton Bank and Trust in Princeton, and they were established in 1836. They happened to have the original books from 1836 and 37 in the basement with all the deposits and everything. And I said, please, can I go down and look? Because I wanted to see how much Portuguese gold and Spanish silver and everything was being deposited. But they converted everything at that time period into dollars and cents. Now, after the Revolutionary War, for a long time, everything was still conducted in British pounds, shillings, and pence, and it was whatever you tendered was converted to that because that's what they were used to. And it took a while before everything got to be dollars and cents. So there was a conversion period. There were probably some disputes, and especially at how much the seller would accept a foreign coin for. Like, he may not accept it for the full monetary value of its weight. So there'd be a lot of negotiating and debating going on. I can't imagine that it was that simple to do sometimes. Roger.
I have a question for you that I'm going to add, a question to you on this too. Most almanacs of the period have in the very front a conversion table. So, I mean, you can look down the almanac and all the stuff where he's talking about.
Well, this is true. Almanacs and ready reckoners and scales would have charts in them with all the different coins and their values. And their values actually in different states and in different colonies. And I just attended a talk by Professor Farley Grubb, and he brought into account something that the states, well, I should say the colonies, would accept coins in commerce based on tael or tare. By tael, they would accept a Spanish 8 real as an 8 real in taxes. If it's by tare, they would accept it if it was full weight, or if it was not full weight, they would accept it for that fraction thereof. And that changed from colony to colony. And to your point, it can get kind of confusing when you have to take a scale around to measure gold and silver coins.
Is there evidence that a lot of the copper was shaved, or is that more for precious metal?
Well, the copper, shaving a copper coin didn't get you that much. It was precious metals that they would shave or somehow clip, which comes into question why were some of the copper coins from England reeded? Why would you reed an edge of a copper coin? Why would you put United States on the edge lettering for a copper coin? I don't know why. I don't think it's for shaving or clipping, but you don't know. Maybe just looks pretty. Yes?
The Red Book section on colonials has evolved quite a bit in 60 years.
It has.
And you referred to the Voce Populi as one that you thought really didn't belong there.
My opinion.
Other opinions, ideas? I mean, we used to just call it colonial, and it's colonial pre-federal. But
Okay.
it's expanded
What-
a lot to
okay.
include various, European issues like you.
Okay, there's a couple that I've questioned with, but some friends of mine, people I know and respect, have helped the Red Book advance over all these years in the colonial section. And it's amazing how much information is in this much of a book. It is fascinating. Being that this is taped, I really hope that someday the Red Book will recognize the Perkins funeral medals. Jacob Perkins in Boston struck these funeral medals, 1800 skull and crossbones and funeral urn. They're an American product. Any of the medals that are in the Red Book right now, I think are shadowed by the Perkins Funeral Medals, and I believe they should be in the Red Book. I hope someday they will be. So that's something I wish was in there. You know, you can debate about other things. I take the room that they use for the Voci Populi and put in the Perkins Funeral Medals. But things that seem easy and correct may not always be that simple to do. So I don't want to simplify the ability to do something that I think would be awesome. But it would be awesome if they did it. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I know you talked about Sweden or New Sweden and their copper plates. Other sources of copper for the coins made here?
Okay, the coins made here, they'd get their copper from all sources. There were some copper mines here. They would also, it was a recycling society. They would recycle copper from cannons, from pots, pans, things like that. So a lot of the copper, most of the copper was imported, but there were copper mines. There's one in Granby. I think there were a couple in New Jersey. I believe the Morristown Mint location had a copper mine nearby. So the sources were varied. Other questions? Oh, don't be bashful. Roger.
Sorry, Ray, I have a cultural question. I saw that the series of pennies and half cents, they feature women. And I happen to like women, so I'm not object to that at all. But why women?
Okay, I believe Bill Eckberg could probably answer that better than me, but I believe the early states of the mint wanted a personification of liberty. They didn't want a monarch on. But let me have Bill Eckberg field that question.
Yeah, that goes back to ancient Rome at least. Libertas was a goddess of Rome, not actually quite a goddess, but close to a goddess of Rome. And she was portrayed on coins. And Libertas and goddess. Anyway, Libertas was portrayed on Roman coins. She was always a female, and she always had a Elias liberty cap, and she always had a staff. And that's why those things appeared on the early U.S. coins. It was a copy of Rome, and it was basically to try to make our coins look really professional. The Mint knew that they had to be more professional than the people that made the Colonies, because they had to stand up to all the crowned heads of Europe. And so they tried to do everything that they could to make their product as professional as possible. And they did that without anybody knowing how to do it. They started from no knowledge and very quickly built a working mint. But that's where the image came from.
Thanks, Bill. I knew Bill would have an answer.
Britannia also was a woman.
Right? Britannia is from Roman times. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah, Roger, you had a question.
What do you think you commented earlier that counterfeit British half pennies were used in common everyday circulation. What do you think circulated more every day in the colonies? The British counterfeit half pennies or cut in variations of Spanish mill dollars and Spanish coins?
Oh, well, they would circulate in conjunction. They'd use the copper for small change and the silver for larger transactions. Oh, the cut pieces of silver. Those are mostly found down in the tobacco colonies around Virginia, and where for some reason they didn't have a lot of copper coins down there.
Geographic, I'm with you. It's kind of like coming in through New York down to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
They got counterfeit British half pennies, but coming up through the rum trade, sugar trade,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Spanish coins.
Yeah, it's geographical and also time-wise. When coins, I think it was after or during the French and English War that the general, I have the names at home, he sought Parliament to send him like a huge quantity of, large quantity of pistorenes and half pistorenes. And that record of the request exists. There's no record that it would actually happened, but with the number of pistorenes being found in Virginia, we assume that he got the pistorenes to pay the troops that he had ordered. So that's why those are all down there. Most of the silver that's cut is pistorenes, not Spanish American. The Spanish American coins had more silver in them than their pistorene equivalents. Other questions?
So I was in Williamsburg, Virginia, at one of the museums, and they said something that's always rung in my head, that you were mentioning recycling to get copper. They said that all the Virginia coins that were minted came from planchets that were cut from barrel rings. Like, is there any truth to that?
Well, I know the copper was recycled. The Virginia half pennies, I know that Virginia had to supply the copper. I don't know offhand if they shipped the copper there or if they used Swedish or British copper and just bought the copper there to prevent having to ship it. I don't know. But if you leave your name and email address afterwards, I'd be happy to find out for you. Yeah, I saw another hand. Yes?
The Irish coins that you showed?
Yes?
And also the Swedish, were they minted here? Or
No, they were brought over. Now, I did some research with the Swedish American Society, and the people I talked to that had diaries from the time period of New Sweden, essentially, they weren't paid to be here. They used accounting sheets, and if they needed something, they got it from like a commissary, and if they made it back to Sweden, then they would be reimbursed and paid financially. So whatever Swedish coins are found here were just whatever the settlers brought over in their pockets. If you're going to relocate someplace permanently, you're going to bring what you have to bring, sell the rest, and bring the money with you. And that's what most of the colonists did, including New Sweden. Others? That's all? Well, thank you so much for taking this time. Lots of cool stuff for you to think about adding to your collection and not breaking the bank. Take care, everyone.